Fear and greed are commonly considered two of the most motivating factors of human behavior.
And that's true in the realm of finances. If you're greedy, we probably can't help you. If you have fears or concerns, there are things you can do to turn those fears into success.
One of the biggest fears out there is the fear of failure. It's why many people never get started. Maybe they failed before and were hurt in the process. It very well could be. But there's something that's even worse than fearing failure. Listen to what Kevin O'Leary has to say about this.
What's more expensive than failure? Sitting around being miserable when you fail on something. That's really expensive. Why? Because you're wasting your time. Wasting time when you're an entrepreneur is horrific.
Kevin O'Leary, also known as Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank, was very passionate about photography as a young man. But his stepfather encouraged him to look at something else in life that would support and produce the wealth that he was looking for.
So many people are told to follow their passion nowadays, but his stepfather encouraged him to follow something more practical. And look what his life has turned into. He's been successful. I'm sure he's had time to pursue photography if that's what he wanted to do.
Yes, he has pursued a lot of different things in his career. I think one of the first things he did was pursue the software industry back when it was downloaded on computers off CD-ROMs.
Yes, he started a company that was called SoftKey in 1983, and they sold software. A lot of it was packaged on CD-ROMs throughout the 90s. By the mid-1990s, he had raised over $1 billion of financing and went out and vigorously acquired competitors. So those free CDs that you would get when you purchased a computer that had all the free software on there, or sometimes you'd purchase the software on CDs at the big box retail stores, that often was related to Kevin O'Leary's company. He ended up acquiring several companies, including the Learning Company, ended up rebranding to the Learning Company. He acquired Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing, a program I used to
I was going to say that should sound familiar to you.
Yeah, a lot of people ended up using that program throughout the 90s as they learned typing. He sold that company in 1999, right before the dot-com bubble. It was perfect timing if you look back at it in hindsight.
What we can see from him is he just didn't go out, start a company, and then experience success, and then sit back and do nothing. He went on to, make changes, to acquire other companies,
Yes.
and to sell
Raise
off. Raise financing, and to sell off when maybe he noticed something happening in the market. So he didn't just set it and forget it. So many people talk about, I'm just going to be success and I'm going to have a life of leisure. Yeah. I'm going to retire earlier.
Or I'm going to build this evergreen system that's just going to keep on making money for me in my sleep. No, he was definitely involved in it. And then once he left his software company, then he's been involved in several other ventures where he's raised capital. He raised capital for a company called O'Leary Funds, and now he runs O'Shares, which invests in startup companies. He has a net worth of about $400 million. And although he's had failures along the way, if we were to scrutinize his record, we'd probably find several of those. Something that comes through as we look at Kevin O'Leary's life is that successful people are action-oriented, and he certainly is one of those.
And successful people don't necessarily look at failures as failures. Michelle, this last winter when we were in Fort Myers, we toured the Thomas Edison laboratory that is there, where he had his winter headquarters. And one of the things that I remember that Thomas Edison said when people asked him after he had failed over 10,000 times to find the filament for a light bulb, they said, "Don't you feel like you failed enough?" And he said, "No, I know 10,000 ways it won't work." It's a different mindset that we have when we're really seeking the solution for things and success instead of just an excuse.
And something that's also nice is that we don't always even have to experience failure ourselves to learn from failure. Sometimes we can be noticing what other people are doing and what is leading to their failures and learn from that. So failure can be a good thing. We can learn from other people's failures. We can also learn from our own failures, and we can notice a failure and even stop it before it can continues to grow and become a bigger failure. We can take a failure, learn a lesson, and turn that failure into a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block.
One of the best ways to learn from failures is to learn from other people's failures, because you don't probably have enough time to fail. In fact, some failures are rather dangerous. You don't want to learn from those by personal experience. You may not have another time to learn from that again. So yes, you want to learn from failure, and when you do things, you want to fail in such a way that it doesn't preclude you trying again. So many people, they set themselves up and go all in, and if they're headed for a catastrophic failure, well, that might preclude them from trying something along those lines for a long time again. You want to avoid that type of failure, but with proper planning, you can fail fast. Is something that's often you hear that thrown around quite a bit in the world of successful people, because they realize you have to try things and figure out what works. And if you can fail fast and not lose all the ground that you've gained, well, now you're paving a path to where you want to go.
Also, it's important to realize that failure is an event.
Yes.
It is not a person. And failure doesn't need to define you as a person. It's just something that went wrong. We think of a baby that's learning how to walk, and they stand up and they take a few steps and they're quickly on the ground again. But what do? Just sit there and cry? No, they get up and they try again, and they fall over and over again. Now, there is a point where they tire out and maybe they do cry, but the next day they'll be back up and going again.
One of the greatest basketball players that ever played on the NBA was cut in one of his early attempts to play basketball in high school. And his coach said, nope, you're not part of the team. And it motivated him so much that he went out and he began to play till it was way past dark, shooting baskets, shooting hoops, until he said he was so tired he could hardly drag himself into bed. And if he hadn't have taken that failure of being cut and turning it into persistent determination, we would have never heard about Michael Jordan.
Wow. There's a common thread that's going through all of these, and that is the scarcity of time. So while we can fail, time is always scarce. So if we can redeem the time, in other words, there's a Bible verse that talks about this. It says, redeem the time, for the days are evil. It's in Ephesians chapter 5. And one of the things that we like about life insurance is it allows us to redeem the time. Even term life insurance. Think about someone who's young, just starting a family. They buy term life insurance to protect their family. They're redeeming the time in case their time is cut short. Their family has something to continue living on. But term life insurance, you never get the premiums back for. And that's one of the reasons we like whole life so well, because you're building equity with that type of life insurance. The death benefit starts out smaller. It's still life insurance, still can help you redeem the time from the death benefit perspective, but it also builds the cash value that can help you redeem time in another way, because everything we buy in life has to be financed. And so if we use our life insurance cash values to build up the financing that we need, and then we use that financing, well, now our money doesn't go to zero, to earning zero when we use that. It still has that long-term growth from the life insurance policy. It's keeping our money at work while we're able to use it too. That's another way to redeem the time.
A lot of experts out there produce a lot of fear because of what they say about certain things, including infinite banking. I think a lot of the experts that say infinite banking doesn't work maybe have tried it and failed. Possibly they just don't know what they think they know. I mean, I'm thinking of a story that appeared back in the Wall Street Journal in 2009, where Sir William Prince, chief engineer of the British Post Office, said in 1878, "The Americans need the telephone, but we do not. We have plenty of messenger boys."
When was that?
1878.
Wow. Right before the heyday of the telephone. I guess the British might have been a little late getting on that bandwagon.
He was the chief engineer of the British Post Office. He thought they had everything they needed, and maybe they did on that small island at that time, but he had no way of realizing how far reaching the telephone would be.
He didn't understand the potential.
He had a narrow mind.
Yes, and Nelson Nash talks about this in Becoming Your Own Banker. He calls it the arrival syndrome. And when he used to come out to our seminars, he'd talk about the arrival syndrome, that we get to a point, or we can get to a point where we think we know everything there is to know. And this can happen on the level of experts who have a certain expertise, and they think anything that falls outside of their expertise is not valuable. Or it can even happen to us personally when we think, oh, we don't know about that, and so certainly it won't work for us. Or we're in a comfortable zone where we think, I think I'm managing my finances fine. I don't want to really make any changes. I'm just comfortable. And that's the arrival syndrome. Is I've got everything here. I don't need anything more. And so in that perspective, no wonder he said, we don't need the television or telephone. We've got our page voice.
Messenger voice.
Messenger voice.
Yeah.
Of course, not just to pick on the British. We've got right here in America in 1946, the president of 20th Century Fox said, television just won't be able to hold the marketing value because people get tired of staring at a plywood box.
So that guy not only didn't have vision, he didn't want television.
Yeah. Well, I guess television is decreasing today. It certainly had its heyday. He's definitely been wrong about that. But now people are looking at their small screens. All right. So it will change over time.
Sure.
But to say that it would never hold on to any market it captured after the first 6 months, wow, how obviously ridiculous was that? And it was true for computers as well. Thomas Watson, the chairman of IBM in 1943, he said, "I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers." That seems hilarious to us today.
I mean, now we got a computer in our refrigerator, in our dishwasher, our car, everywhere you look, everything's computerized.
Yeah.
But these people, they have the arrival syndrome, like Nelson Nash. And I think a lot of people that debunk and criticize infinite banking, they have the arrival syndrome. And they don't realize that infinite banking is such a powerful financial tool because they have had some success in their own area, maybe. Or maybe they're just afraid of trying something new.
Sometimes people don't have the vision for it either. They know what they've always known, and why should there be anything new that comes along to rattle their way of thinking? It's a form of the rival syndrome, maybe not as severe, but thinking about these things can let us avoid the pitfalls that can come with success so that we can keep growing. People that get any form of the arrival syndrome stop growing, and that's when they start rotting.
When we get back from the break, we're going to talk about what you can do to overcome your fears and experience success.
This is the Infinite Banking Made Simple binder. Everything you need to know about infinite banking in one spot. And it's a free download. Answers to the top commonly asked questions like what is infinite banking, how does it work, and how much does it cost to get started are answered right here. You'll find the step-by-step diagram starting on page 7 and the investment comparison on page 8. This Infinite Banking Made Simple binder is a free download. You can click the button to get your copy. At McPhee Insurance, we believe infinite banking has become too complicated and confusing, but it shouldn't be. And that's why we created this binder. Infinite banking is simple when you stick to the essentials and the facts. And the people who put it into practice get results. Don't let insurance terms like modified endowment contract, 7-pay test, direct recognition, and paid-up additions keep you from understanding infinite banking. Download the free binder and see how infinite banking can work for you.
One way to get over the fear of failure is don't take failures personally. Accept the responsibility for it, change what you need to change, and move forward.
My siblings and I sing gospel songs in 4-part harmony. One of the things that we're thinking about doing is going into a studio to record an album. And we were talking to the man who hosts the studio, and he said, one of the things you need to be sure to get over is if you come in and one of you is flat, you need to take that feedback without taking it personally. That's an important attribute to being successful. You have to be able to take feedback and adjust without taking it personally and getting offended and counting it as a failure.
One of the things he encouraged you to do too is just schedule a time.
Yes.
Schedule a time
Get a
and
schedule.
come in and start where you're at so you can get to where you want to be. Because if you always, are just planning for this and never actually schedule and get in the studio and start,
Nothing happens.
Nothing's going to happen.
Nothing's going to get recorded by magic. And something else we have to be realistic about is, yes, we're very good at singing together. And if we practiced a lot, we could probably make a business out of that. But that's not what we want to do. We have other interests in the family, and we don't all want to come together for that purpose and build something around that. So we might record an album here or there, but we're not planning to make it a life career. And so we have to keep that in mind and make sure it's balanced with the other things that we're doing.
Something else this fellow said is, how do you practice? And you said, well, we just get up and around the piano and we sing and we record it and then we re-listen to ourselves and find out which one's off. And he says, well, that's the hard way. And I remember someone asking him, well, is there an easier way? And he says, no, that's the only way. And that's true in life. We've got to get out there and do it.
Yes.
And then review what we did and look at our failures and say, oh, we did it wrong there. Let's do it again. And let's skip that thing that made us fail. And if we don't get back up, we'll never walk. Just like the baby, if it fell down the first time and didn't get back up after it was trying to walk, it would be an infant the rest of its life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's kind of like riding a bicycle too. You can talk about it, you can watch someone do it, but until you actually get on it and, now you've got this balance thing and, figuring out. And we use the example of a bicycle because everyone has had to learn at some time. Some of us were a little older than others. So that is an example that we realize pertains to so many other things in life.
That's why it's so important to have a coach when we're doing infinite banking. Someone that has experience, someone that had several policies that they've been banking with for a long time, because they can steer us so that we don't have to have the failures that they've had and that many people fall into. We can get the right policy that's built for infinite banking right from the very get-go if we're working with agents that really understand this, instead of trying to get a policy that is designed to pay a higher commission to the agent selling it.
If people fail with infinite banking, it often turns out they started too big. It's one of the things Nelson Nash warned about. They tried to do too much too quickly with the infinite banking concept. It reminds me of the parable in the Bible where some of the seed that the sower was sowing fell on the rocky soil. And immediately it sprang up, but because it had no depth of soil, it wilted away. And that's a common point of failure with the infinite banking concept. You want to make sure that you start big enough that it's going to be a sizable benefit in your long-term finances, but not too big that it's not sustainable. Finding that balance takes wisdom and experience.
So basically, we want to know the rules. And the rules in infinite banking, right out of Nelson Nash's book, are: number one, you want the largest premium possible for you. Number two,
Minimum death benefit.
that's the second rule.
Okay.
You want the least amount of death benefit possible.
Yes.
Number three, you want to have the highest cash value that's possible without triggering the IRS tax rules. And number four, you want the shortest period of time that you pay those premiums. If you follow those four rules, now you're going to exempt yourself from a lot of failures that are failures because of improper following the rules.
And then something else that comes in with infinite banking, we alluded to it earlier when we talked about redeeming the time, is a lot of people put off getting started.
Oh.
And the problem with putting off getting started is that the clock is ticking, and we're talking about life insurance. And the longer you wait, the more expensive the insurance becomes. And that's just because age is a factor. And so we commonly see people say, well, I'm not too sure about this. And so they wait and they'll contact us a few years later. Okay, now I need to get started. But there's some other component that they've never actually taken the step forward. So now it's even more difficult for them to take a step forward. So getting started just as soon as you can is the greatest benefit. Now, if you're one of those people who has put it off, or maybe you're just now learning about it, then the thing that comes is people say, oh, I should have started this earlier. Yeah, you should have, but you didn't. So let's get started now.
So a lot of why people procrastinate after they hear about how infinite banking works is they have the fear of what if. What if the U.S. currency is no longer the world currency? What if, we have World War III? What if, the Iraqi dinar, blossoms and now all the dinars that I bought are worth millions and millions of dollars? It's always a what if thing. And we don't know tomorrow. That's why everything that we do in life takes faith. We can only see what we're doing right now. The faith part comes that we have a belief that tomorrow can be better if we do something different today than what everybody else is doing. And that's what successful people see is, we can make tomorrow better if we do this today.
Some people are paralyzed with fear. Some people are motivated by fear. And the choice between the two, that can be a choice. You could decide between, you can say, I don't want to be paralyzed by this fear anymore. I'm going to be motivated by it. I'm going to go out and channel that fear into action. It's kind of similar to the way some people process grief. We talked about Charlie Kirk on the podcast, and his wife Erica was obviously grieving in some of her public appearances recently. But now she has channeled that grief into continuing the work that Charlie started. And that's the way to handle fear as well. You have to channel it into action.
Not that Erica will ever get over the void that Charlie out of her life has created.
No.
But she can use that to motivate her to succeed in other areas.
What's going to best honor his legacy, his memory? Well, it's going to be the action that he would have wanted to happen.
And sometimes we like to coddle our fears and hold on to them and make them as an excuse of why we aren't where we want to be in life because of this or that or another thing. And it's, I remember Nelson Nash telling me when I said, boy, I wish I'd have known about this 20 years ago. He said, Tom, get a piece of paper, draw a line and get over it. I mean, there comes a point in time that you just got to do it.
Yes.
And I think that that fear of what if really keeps people from doing that.
And we can't be afraid about dreaming either. Go ahead and dream. I remember there was a book written by Leonard Read, who was one of Nelson Nash's mentors. He was the founder of the Foundation for Economic Education. He said the book was called Castles in the Air. He said it's okay to build castles in the air. Now put foundations under them. This is something good to keep in mind when we're setting goals. We can dream about things, but in order to be able to set a goal, there are a few things that we have to get in order. We have to be sure that we have the benefits of reaching that goal listed out, because that's what's going to motivate us to take the action. Not the fact that we know we ought to do it, or that we should do this or should do that. We know things about that all the time, and it's easy to procrastinate with those things. But if we know the benefits, it's easier to take action. That's what keeps us motivated. At the same time, when we're setting a goal, we also have to be realistic about the obstacles we're going to face. Listing those obstacles out can be a good way to think through them. Think, what can you do to overcome those obstacles with specific action steps? Action steps. You have to have action steps on a goal. If you have a goal, but you can't take action steps on it today and tomorrow, but maybe 5 years from now, it's not really a goal. It's still a dream, and you have to have enough vision toward that goal that you can set a deadline on it. Yeah, you might set a deadline that you don't end up reaching, but it still needs a deadline in order to be a goal rather than a dream.
At the same time, we can't let our goals and our vision of the future keep us from taking action today on what we do know.
Yes.
I remember people that wanted to work in our agency early on. They wanted to get their office all designed, and the desk and the paint scheme and the rug and the carpet and this. They never got a client, and they never sold a policy, but they had all this stuff.
Their business plan.
Their goals were focused on the wrong things.
Yes.
And that brings up the idea of maybe these people have a fear of success.
Sometimes.
There are people that are afraid that they might be successful because they don't know what they will do with it, or they have a belief that being successful isn't really charitable. If I'm more successful then I have to steal from other people to get that. And that's not a true understanding of infinite banking or success.
They have a different vision.
They do. Because in our book, Winning Your Financial Game, we talk about the law of scarcity. That's a basic economic law, that there are certain scarcities in the world. There's only so much oxygen, there's only so much gold, there's only so much land mass and all this. And we can say, oh, everyone's already bought it all, I don't have a chance. Or we can take the law of liberty and we can overcome the law of scarcity. And that's what the American dream is all about. The whole American experiment proved beyond a doubt that the law of liberty overcomes the law of scarcity. And if we hide behind the fear of being successful, we really haven't accepted the fact that we are free creatures made by our Creator, and we can do what we need to do to overcome the scarcity that He's put in creation.
And that's the example of that telephone.
Absolutely.
The telephone created liberty to talk with anyone, anywhere, no matter how many messenger boys you might have.
If we think about the human reasons for failure, we could probably distill it down to a lack of vision, a lack of knowledge, or a lack of discipline.
Failure is an event. It's not a person. Today really does end tonight, and tomorrow is a brand new day. So go live it fully.
Time will go by anyway, whether you sit on the couch and feel sorry for yourself, whether you spend all your money and don't save, whether you learn to manage your money and control your future. Time will go by anyway. The results you get will be determined by the action you take.
We're still deciding what we're going to talk about next week here on Wealth Talks. We haven't decided whether that's going to be gold, silver, and the infinite banking concept, or if we might talk about commercial real estate investing and the infinite banking concept. If you have ideas for something you would like us to talk about, send us an email, producer@wealthtalks.com, and we'll be back next week right here on Wealth Talks.